Aloe lele, talofa, pula, kiorana, namaste, tēnā koutou. Warm Asian Pacific greetings to you all. I'm Carla Nanakorn, Director of the Suicide Prevention Office, and it's my privilege to welcome you to this event to mark World Suicide Prevention Day. Thank you for making the time. I will open our hui with a karakia, the karakia of Te Manatū Hauora, and then I'll hand over to our MC, Jahan. Ka inui tātou. Whaia, 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 ngā uaratanga o Te Manatū Hauora. Ko te manaakitanga, ko te kaitiakitanga, ko te whakapono, ko te kōkiri ngātahi. Kia tai atu tātou ki pai tata, ki pai tāwhiti, ki pai ora. Kia tūturu ka whakamaua kia tīna. Tīna. Humi e, mi e, tai ki e.
Kia ora, Carla, and kia ora to all of you joining us from around the motu. Thank you for making time for this kōrero this morning, and it's fantastic to have you with us as we mark World Suicide Prevention Day. We have an action-packed hour, plenty of fantastic guests with us as we talk about suicide prevention in Aotearoa. What is working? What are the opportunities for us to improve and come together to ensure that this is a conversation that all New Zealanders can be part of? So thank you for making time to join us this morning. And I want to give a special shout out to those of you joining us from Tamaki Makaurau, Auckland today. We are so grateful for the sacrifices that you are making to ensure that we can get right down to level 1 as soon as possible. And I note that we do have the Health Minister on the call today. I'm not expecting any surprise announcements about a level change, but fingers crossed we can move down those levels a bit further in the coming weeks. So I'd like to welcome our speakers and our guests, especially the Minister of Health, the Honourable Andrew Little, the Associate Minister of Health, the Honourable Opito William-Seal, Associate Minister of Health, the Honourable Pini Henare, Denise Kingi-Uluave, Chief Executive of LEVAR, Dr. Henemoa Elder, Chair of the Expert Reference Panel, Josiah Tualamali'i, Trustee of a number of organisations, including LEVAR and a Wellbeing Policy Advisor, and Jaden Iti, Kia Piki Te Ora Coordinator at He Waka Tapu. We will hear from all of them over the next hour. There they all are, ready to beam into your living rooms or your offices or wherever you might be this morning. We're also going to hear from rangatahi about how they keep their whānau and friends safe and well. And we'll have an update on some of the work that's being done to address our country's suicide rate. And I should note that this session is being recorded for those who are unable to make it, or if you'd like to watch this again, we'll be able to share that link with you a little bit later. Now, I think we can all agree that every day should be World Suicide Prevention Day, but today is a good opportunity to take a step back and reflect on where we are with our suicide prevention efforts as a nation. And I think each of us probably has a story from our own life about when we first encountered suicide. I think I was about 16 years old. I was at high school when one of my classmates took his own life, and I vividly remember going to the funeral with some of my mates. And the thing I remember is walking into that church and hearing music by the Black Eyed Peas and Justin Timberlake pumping over the church speakers. And as a 16-year-old, I remember how wrong that felt, how wrong it was that we were gathering together during the summer holidays to say goodbye to one of our classmates. And we went back to school, and that was kind of the end of it. No one really mentioned it. No one talked about it again. We didn't have any specific support. This was back in a time when we weren't having many of the conversations that we are today. And over the last 10 years, I've been fortunate as a journalist to travel around the country and meet whānau who've been affected by suicide and meet people who have lived experience of suicidality. And what we've seen, of course, is that as this topic has become more prominent, many well-intentioned people have wanted to stimulate conversations to create kōrero around this topic of suicide. But all of you who are joining us today, because most, if not all of you work in this field, you know, and you often tell us that what is most important is the how. It's how do we frame this conversation? How do we talk about suicide in a way that actually helps to solve the problem rather than puts people at risk? So the theme for World Suicide Prevention Day today is creating hope through action. How do we actually bring hope into this conversation? For those years when I was traveling around and reporting on mental health, I really had no clue that I would experience mental distress myself. I think like a lot of people, I thought I was bulletproof. And then in 2016, I began to experience severe depression. And I had a period of about 4 years in my life where I was experiencing significant mental distress and suicidality while working in television, putting on the mask each day and heading out into the world to tell other people's stories. And I think something that I realized is, often we frame this conversation around what are we going to do about suicide? Whereas in fact, the questions we really need to be asking are, what are we going to do about social isolation? What are we going to do about trauma? What are we going to do about poverty? How do we help people to have a far more holistic understanding of their mental health? How do we encourage conversations about suicide that take people beyond this sort of really binary framing of, am I mentally well or am I mentally ill? And for me, the biggest game changer in my own life is when I stopped fixating on this idea that my brain was broken or that something had gone wrong inside my head, that actually I explored my life story. I explored some of the experiences I'd had. I'd explored some of the issues like loneliness and grief that I hadn't properly dealt with. And it was through that process that I actually found a way to overcome that period of distress and survive and to go on to do the things that I'm doing in my life today. And I know that many of you on the call today will have similar experiences and I want to thank you for your commitment to this kaupapa. So let's crack into it and let's hear first from the Health Minister, the Honourable Andrew Little, to kick us off, and we'll move into a panel discussion after that. But Minister, thank you for making time to join us during this very busy period for you and your colleagues. Over to you. Minister, please unmute yourself.
Fatal mistake. Kia ora tātou katoa, ka hua te rā tū toi ora, mauri ora, kia tātou katoa. Thank you, Jahan, for your opening words and for that very powerful story you've told too. I also acknowledge Carla, the head of the Suicide Prevention Office, my colleagues, Peter Williams-Sewell and Penny Henare, Associate Health Ministers, and to our guests who are going to be on the panel and so on as well. So a great privilege to be with you all here on this very important occasion, marking World Suicide Prevention Day. Can I acknowledge those of you who are in Tamaki Makaurau, just again, as Jahan did as well, just the efforts that you're putting in. I think this lockdown has been particularly difficult and hard for many of us. It's been different to last year's lockdowns. And I know this has been unsettling for a lot of people. So I just want to acknowledge that. But we're making good progress and I'm confident we'll be out of this just as soon as we can. Can I also just acknowledge too, though, whānau and friends who have lost loved ones to suicide, and will be feeling and reflecting and acknowledging too, and knowing that every suicide is a tragedy because every life matters. And so I would just want to acknowledge that and express my sorrow and regret for those circumstances that do arise for families and friends. As Jahan said, this is an occasion where we can think about how we talk about suicide. We haven't been good at it, and I know a lot of work, and I know a lot of Carla's work in her time in the office has been about working with media and others about how we actually do talk about suicide, the distress and the despair and the circumstances that people find themselves in. Because we have to be able to find a way to talk about it if we're going to be supportive, be there, and be there to help people at a time when they most need it. It's always difficult to to put the effects and the consequences of suicide into words. And many of us who have had the experience of losing good people we know, good friends, loved ones we know to suicide know that there is a period where we can't explain to ourselves. We don't know. And so any effort that we can take to find a way to talk about it, to find the right words, most importantly to understand, is going to be important for us. And that's the important role, I think, the leadership role that the Suicide Prevention Office plays to help us as a nation through that. I want to acknowledge the good work that has been done across communities right throughout Aotearoa, New Zealand, and we'll have a chance later in this to acknowledge organisations and individuals who play a role in helping us to understand, but most importantly, to provide support for a time when people need that. We are working on making sure that we are putting more support for people whose mental health is under pressure and is at risk. We have more to do. There's no question about that. And the more we can do, the more we do, then the better chance we have to better understand and to provide support for people at the time they most need it. And we will continue that work. As I said, every life matters, and one suicide is one too many. That was the principle we adopted when we considered approaches we take to suicide. Every life is important and every life is valuable, and that's the approach we take. So this is about taking a moment to think about that, to reflect on it, to think about hope and to provide hope, to know that there is help, and to know that there are those in the community supported in some cases, in many cases, with the support that government gives, to provide that help and be committed to being there and continuing the work that we have started. To all of those involved in this work, thank you. Thank you for the work that you do. It's important to us all. It's important to families and whānau around the Motu. And thank you for the opportunity to be part of this observance today. Thank you.
Kia ora, Minister. Thank you for those opening reflections. And we're going to hear now from some rangatahi who are going to share with us how they look after the well-being of themselves and their friends and whānau. What do they do to share hope? Take a look at this.
World Suicide Prevention Day is more than just a day. It's an opportunity for us all to create hope through purposeful action.
Suicide prevention means doing everything that you can to help save a life. That might mean following your gut feeling and checking on a friend, or pointing them in the right direction if you don't know how to help.
Suicide prevention to me is checking in on my friends and my whānau. It's knowing what services are available should they need any help. And it's asking for help when needed.
Sometimes we feel like helping someone that's going through a hard time means we need to have the right words or the right advice to make them feel better. But in most cases, it's just being present in the moment with them.
Wellness to me is a balance between being physically fit and mentally fit as well. Although we spend a lot of time getting ourselves physically fit, I think it's important to find the balance between being emotionally fit as well, making sure that we're doing the things we do enjoy.
Wellness to me means health. It means getting outdoors, staying active, taking a break, and most importantly, knowing you'll get through whatever comes next.
A couple of things I try to apply in my life when I feel a friend or a whānau member is having a hard time is, if it's within my capacity, I'll try and find practical ways to try and lighten the load in their life, whether it be grabbing some groceries, paying for a bill, or organising a gathering for them to be surrounded and reminded of how loved they are.
I think that wellness is about looking after your mind and body, and taking care of yourself and putting yourself first.
What gives me hope is living in a beautiful country like Aotearoa, filled with amazing people who day in and day out are creating positive change for our generation and the generations to come.
Another thing that gives me hope is my friends, my family, and just people around me, both younger and older, being more open to talk about how they're feeling, how it's becoming more okay to talk about the bad days just as much as the good days.
Wellness to me is having good kai in my puku, getting a good night's rest, as well as having a strong connection with my whānau and my friends. And through Aroha and Manaakitanga, we have the ability to support each other through any obstacle, really.
What can family and friends do to help somebody who's going through a hard time? It's just about being there. It's about being there physically, it's about being there emotionally, it's being able to sit in some really, really hard feelings and some really hard experiences that people go through, but it's also about doing the normal things as well, like sending people memes and going out to the movies.
Suicide prevention is important because regardless of race, age, gender, sexuality, religion, where you're from or how much you make, we all deserve to live a life that is full, one where we can step into our purpose, give back to our community, and pursue whatever it is that we love doing.
If you need help or want to know how you can help, keep watching for more information.
Awesome. Some fantastic words of wisdom there. Thank you to all of our rangatahi for their words of encouragement today on World Suicide Prevention Day. Let's get straight to our panel discussion. So we have 4 fantastic leaders in the sector here. There they all are. Man, this is a heavy-hitting panel. We had a brief chat earlier, but we didn't want to get too far ahead of ourselves. So let's have the real conversation now. Welcome Dr. Hinemoa Elder, Denise Kingi Uluabe, Josiah Tualamalii and Jaden Eti. Thank you all for joining us today. Hinemoa, let me start with you. Why does suicide prevention matter to you?
E te waiti e te waita rauranga tirama, tēnā koutou katoa. Mihi aroha ki a koutou ngā whānau e pāna ki tēnei ngangara, ko te whakamomori tērā. Tēnā tātou. Thank you. I'm so inspired by what we just heard from those rangatahi, words of real practical wisdom there. This is an important kaupapa to me, to our whole whānau, because sadly my younger brother took his own life in 1999. And so this is not a theoretical kaupapa for us. For many of us, it's such a big kaupapa in Aotearoa that it's hard to imagine any whānau that haven't been touched in some way by suicidal thinking and feeling, those tortured experiences that people have in those losses. So for us, my little brother lost his life to those thoughts that took over his life. So that's why I feel really driven and committed to make a difference. And I work with people most days who are struggling with those kinds of experiences. So that's why I want to be part of the solutions that we're talking about today. Ngā mihi.
Awesome. Thank you, Hinemoa. And kia ora, Jaden. Would love to hear why this kaupapa is important to you.
Mauri ora te whānau. Kia ora, ko Jaden tuku ingoa. Thanks for that question, Jehan. For me, I lost my father to suicide at the age of 11. And also I lost a whāngai uncle to suicide just last year. So this kaupapa sits deep within my heart. For me, I feel like I've worked in suicide prevention for the last 16 years since my dad passed, sharing the kōrero about hope and sharing the kōrero about getting through it and strengthening whānau and stuff. So this stuff, I've had my own battles with suicide in the past, just dealing with the trauma of losing my dad and trying to work through the understanding of that stuff. So, this stuff sits deep within my heart. It's for me, it's not really a 9-to-5 job. I've got guys that I catch up with on the weekly that I, kōrero about the same kaupapa, because it's not just the people that we're seeing in our communities, it's the people in our homes, it's the people in our, in our friend groups that are really struggling. So having a voice and using it, creating hope, is something that sits deep within me. And, I'm blessed to be able to be on the other side of, the bereaved whānau, and learning through the experiences I've had. I can use those to sort of encourage whānau. I come from a poverty family, there's been sexual abuse in my family. So, there's a lot of stuff that I can use from my experiences, from my traumas to, help out whānau and the communities that are experiencing the same thing. Kia ora.
Kia ora, Jaden. Thank you for your vulnerability and sharing so openly about your own backstory. And it's, I guess, really important as well that people understand that many of those who are working in this area have lived experience, have a connection to this kaupapa. This is not just some academic thing out of a textbook. This is something that many of you care really deeply about. Josiah, I know that this topic is close to your heart as well. Would you like to share a little bit with us?
Yeah, malo lo malie, malo lo valesu for moa malang mama. Asaftai Jahan, malo to everyone on the call. Yeah, I guess the thing that leads me to be connected in this space is Aotearoa as a Pacific country, and being a Pacific country, we have an opportunity to better and deepen the ways that are Pacific and things that help ground and young people who start to feel disconnected from their identity. That was my experience growing up in Dunedin and here in Christchurch now, where I didn't get a sense that I could be a Pacific young person. Dad couldn't be all of himself because in moving here, he had to give up some things as a 17-year-old. It's hard to come from somewhere else at that age and still feel like you belong, let alone all the other things that make you feel that you don't quite fit. And then a little bit later, when I was starting to study, having some of their own personal experience of those challenges myself, and then kind of feeling I don't want anyone else to experience this, and gratefully having great support that helped me through that time. And as someone who's on a number of company boards, I really want people to come to work and feel safe at work, and that we would, in our workplaces, actually live and be in the ways that our tangata whenua here lead with, that we can have whānau space, that we can have whanaungatanga, that and the same for our Pacific ways of being, that we would deepen that here so all of everywhere is safe for everyone.
Kia ora, Josiah. Thank you for sharing that. And Denise, lucky last, please share why this kaupapa is important to you.
Maloe Lele, and thank you, Jahan. I'd just like to acknowledge, as Mr. Little has, all those who have lost somebody through suicide. It is a tragedy, and it does have long-lasting impacts on many of our whānau out there in the community. But I'd also like to acknowledge the ministers who have attended today, to just demonstrating the importance of this mahi, this kaupapa. And so I acknowledge you for your presence here today, ministers. For me, on a personal level, like everybody else and most people in this watching today, our whānau have been impacted by suicide. And and I just, I don't want others to have to go through the hurt and pain and that suffering. And we do know that we can make a difference out there. But on a professional, and that's because on a professional level, I've worked in secondary mental health services, I've worked in prisons, I've worked, just personally with people and family and whānau and friends, and I do know that we can make a difference. We can, when somebody is in that level of distress, that if they get the right timely and effective intervention and support and aroha, it can save lives. And so I'm really, and not just when they access mental health services. This is not just about services. This is about equipping all of our family, our friends, our work colleagues with the skills and the confidence to be able, and the knowledge to be able to intervene in a compassionate and caring way. And sometimes just listening, just to be able to listen to somebody can make a huge difference in their lives. So I want everybody to feel like they have a sense of belonging, a sense of purpose, and that they're accepted for who they are. So that's why I work in this area. Thank you, Gina.
Fantastic. Thank you, Denise, for your work. And I'd like to pick up on the last point that you made there. Hene moa, I feel like for a lot of people, the prevention of whakamomori suicide is seen as a thing that we do, and it sits within a particular sector. There are people who do this as a job, and it's kind of over here. How do we broaden our understanding of suicide prevention, and how do we engage the wider community in that process as well?
Kia ora. I think this is a tension that we come up against often, isn't it? That we've, on one hand, got the idea that the skills, the knowledge, the experience is all cited within services, within clinical services. And yet, on the other hand, we've got our Māori communities, our Pacific communities, also saying, hey, we know that we have the goods here. We have the intimate connectivity with our whānau that really makes the difference. So we're looking for sort of a both and approach. Yes, clinical services have their place, without doubt, but that is a necessary but not sufficient aspect to a wider solution. Many people who live with suicidal thoughts and suicidal actions do not have a mental illness. And so we want to make sure that we can build and enhance the capacity in our wider community, which is really nuanced, which is really context specific to meet the needs of those people. I mean, one of the things I often say to whānau that I'm working with, and that's as a psychiatrist, is to acknowledge the fact that our young people, I'm a child and adolescent psychiatrist, so I'm usually seeing young people in their whānau. Our young people are incredibly careful and caring. And so they put up a mask. They try to hide the pain and suffering that they have inside from their whānau because they love their whānau. And often opening that different way of seeing how teenagers are isolating themselves, how they're pretending that they're well, actually opens up a different kind of conversation within our whānau. So I just use that tiny example to illustrate how when we have slightly different approaches, whether we're in the community or when we're in services, we can broaden the conversation and then activate those resources that are already within whānau, that are already within community, that don't need to be found within a clinical service that is separate from those experiences.
Kia ora. And Josiah, I can see you nodding your head there. I know that you were also on the panel for the mental health inquiry, and we heard from a lot of members of the community around the country that they weren't getting access to the services that they needed. So how do we strike this balance between both strengthening the sector, holding the government to account, quite frankly, and ensuring that the money is being used appropriately, but at the same time, equipping our whānau and our communities to also do what they can to play a role in suicide prevention?
Yeah, whakatau for the question. I think the big opportunity that the country asked for in the inquiry, and also that people are asking for now, is clarity on what to do. And we wrote that report as direction for the country and the government. I think people at times see the responsibility as being on the government to fix these things. And I'm not absolving government in what I'm saying here of the part that they play, which is so important. But we can choose to be part of the easier and the deeper and the better. Like, for example, one of the things that we talk about in the report is the harm of alcohol. And for young people in particular, half of all the deaths by suicide so tragically are factored because of alcohol. We as a society have to choose how we respond to alcohol and other things that harm our communities. And you know, when the alcohol lobby is so strong and the government can only do what we sometimes are willing to encourage them to do, we have to all get on board with the right things. And we see it same as well with the conversion practices legislation. You know, it's really easy for us to say we believe in suicide prevention, but then when it comes to these really key moments where we're having these national discussions, we're not necessarily all acting in harm minimization and trauma-informed ways. And so we're perpetuating the problem. And we can do that. And that's not on the government to choose to do that. That's on us.
Thanks, Josiah. So Denise, how do we do that better? What are some of the specific areas that you think we could improve the way that we're doing suicide prevention at a community level?
Well, I'd just like to acknowledge, the ministry for investing in community-driven initiatives, and we'll hear about some of those today in particular. And I'll just talk. We're investing in initiatives, creative and innovative ways, because around the world, no one's found the solution yet. So we have to look at different avenues in terms of how we can prevent suicide. One of the ones that I'm just going to talk from my experience, is that we've talked about how we need to equip our communities, our whānau members, our friends, our work colleagues, our employees. How do you identify when somebody is in distress? What are the warning signs? How do you have that courageous conversation in a compassionate way? And then where do you refer them to? And Lifekeepers Suicide Prevention Education Program has been funded by the ministry. We've been delivering that in the community for 3 years now, and we are collecting some really powerful, impactful evidence that when you equip our communities with those skills, they can intervene and help prevent suicide. We have people put it into our evaluations. Over 700 people have told us that they've intervened because they had the confidence through the training to then go ahead and have that conversation. So there are things out there working, and this isn't, this is just one example. There are a lot of other people doing amazing things out there to prevent suicide. So I think we're making progress. We've only just started. Investing a large amounts into suicide prevention, so we can have to continue on that pathway. And I have a lot of confidence and hope that we will make a difference. We just have to be a bit patient, give it a bit of time, and like anything, we can always increase our resources in terms of what we can do out there.
Thank you, Denise. Jaden, you are out and about meeting people from different walks of life who are facing challenges. What do you see as some of the biggest contributors to our suicide statistics?
For me, I think, the stigma around it's a mental health issue. A lot of the people we're seeing in our communities and coming into our services don't inherently have mental health issues, but a lot of it comes down to relational issues, poverty, trauma, finances and all that sort of stuff that are affecting our whānau, and to put it into sort of a box is to neglect a lot of what's happening in our communities, what's happening for our whānau. And, for me, the complexities of suicide, it can't be nailed down to one thing. We can't have a one-way mindset where if someone comes in, we send them a certain way. I think an important part as practitioners and as professionals is to actually listen to some of the kōrero, because a lot of our whānau have the answers in the words they speak, but it's allowing ourselves to have the ear to listen to them and understand, have compassion, and then also finding the right services. A lot of the time it can be, especially with funding and stuff like that, it's come to me, but it's actually listening to the whānau, listening to the voices that are out there. For me, I think that suicide prevention is really going to grow in New Zealand when we start empowering the whānau. When the whānau are educated around having those conversations, like Denise said, when the whānau feel empowered to see those people around them and, have that tough conversation and allow themselves to be the key, for us and the services and stuff, for me down in Ōtautahi, where there's 2 of us in the Ka Piki Te Ora role, for all of Canterbury, for us to think that we can be superheroes and affect change in all that places is not going to, be right. It's us taking the steps to empower whānau, to educate whānau so that they can have the conversations. And when it goes to that next level, when they need intervention and stuff, having the ability to refer on to those places. But yeah, kia ora.
Awesome. Josiah, how do we move towards action? Because we talk a lot about awareness, don't we? And I remember I was at high school when Sir John Kirwan wrote the word hope in the sand and opened up this whole corridor. And obviously there are many people who still feel that stigma and aren't even aware of the services, aren't aware that they could ask for help. So awareness is important. I don't want to dismiss that. But at the same time, how do we actually move to action, and how do we actually give people the tools to deal with some of their challenges rather than us just talking about the issues?
Yeah, I think I quite like what the Polynesian Panthers have been saying in another kaupapa around educate to liberate. And I think it's the same here. It really comes down to, can we put the time in to better understand what this is so that we can better understand how we can respond? And it's as simple as that. And then in terms of what we can do in collectives, whatever collective it is, the inquiry report from 2018 still has relevance, a few years later. So there's an opportunity for your organisation to have a response to what we're doing. We all need to move together in this national approach. And this is a long-term path for all of us. And so the more we can do together and deeper together, like we've seen in some of how we've moved around COVID, we need to do that here as well.
Anymore, what is your message to the people who are working in this space day in, day out, regardless of whether they have a title or a professional hat? Because we're hearing that a lot of people, like everyone else, are burning out, they're worn out as we approach the end of this year. How do we look after ourselves, especially when we actually know the textbook and we know all the advice, but we may not be practicing it ourselves?
Kia ora, whātai rangatira. Tērā. So collective self-care is something that we've all had to become a lot more mindful of. And I really do think this is another sphere where we can use this connectivity and the importance of relationships. To me, this is all a sort of broken record approach. We've got to keep singing the song that we sing with the people we work with, internally with ourselves, with our own whānau. So walking our own talk, as doctors, we need to take a good hard look at ourselves often, because we come from a culture where working super long hours, not eating regular meals, not getting good sleeps is kind of part of the badge of honour. This is just how we box on. And we know that that's very unhealthy. And to model that kind of way of working is absolutely unacceptable in the contemporary environment. And it's also a very bad role modelling for our whānau that we work with. So, there's lots of whakatauki and whakatauaki that can help us. One of my favourites is ki te kotahi te kākaho ka whati, ki te kāpuia e kore e whati. This is about the grouping together, the strength in numbers. So for me, self-care is not about our individual activities. It's actually about talking about how we're looking after ourselves and being accountable to each other in the groups that we're in. So it's about checking in with each other. We're all involved in suicide prevention in one way or another, whether we wear the hat of a psychiatrist, kia piki te ora, coordinator, a minister. We're all part of the same conduit of trying to bring hauora to more and more people and prevent people needing clinical services at all. I'd love to be put out of a job, frankly. So looking after ourselves and normalising, actually walking the talk that we're sharing with the whānau we work with, is about the sleep patterns, our dietary patterns, our exercise, especially during this most recent Delta COVID impact, especially in Tāmaki at the moment. So there's a lot of stress. So please normalise talking about it and being real, and drop the mask and let people know how we're actually feeling. Kia ora.
Kia ora. And Jaden, how good are you at practicing what you preach to people in your community? How do you look after your own well-being?
For me, because I've actually seen it quite often. A lot of our kaimahi and our whānau are, like one thing I said to a community who have lost a couple of people to suicide. I said to the kaimahi out there, I said, take your cape off. We don't need superheroes. We need people with hearts that are able to take care of those around us. One thing that I preach, to all the people, especially the kaimahi that come into the spaces, that we need to take care of ourselves first. If we're not well for our whānau, then we're not beneficial for them. So for me, I love sport. I play sport quite often. So even for me this year, it's been an opportunity to have kōrero with some of my league mates around suicide prevention and doing that sort of stuff. Over lockdown, quite common for a lot of our people. Jump on the Zoom with some of the bros and just have a kōrero about how they're going. Seeing, I've got a friend in Melbourne who, seen the effects of that stuff over in Melbourne, and just being able to connect with each other. We're quite lucky that we have Zoom and stuff like that these days, where we can stay connected, when we've got internet and stuff like that. So like you said, practice what you preach. For me, it's taken some time. I learned quite a lot actually when I was unemployed for quite a while back in my younger days. And it's just carrying on that type of kaupapa, that type of aroha behind it. That although we get paid every fortnightly or weekly, in this type of mahi, it's about doing the mahi that doesn't get you paid. About doing the stuff that you can connect with people, and then doing it for yourself, but also doing it for the whānau out there. Kia ora.
Absolutely. And often that's the stuff that we get rid of when we get busy, right? So we actually sort of counterintuitive to prioritize the stuff that seems like it's not important, but actually those are the things that keep us well. Look, we're almost out of time, but I just want to come back to this theme for the day, which is around creating hope through action. And I'd love to ask each of you, where does your hope come from? You're working in an area that can be really heavy a lot of the time. What gives you hope? Denise, maybe we'll start with you.
Okay. And it's when you are connecting with the community and you hear the stories, the messages of hope that they have for the community, and when they have actually made a difference in somebody's life, when you have imparted some knowledge and confidence to them, that's what helps my team at Lavar to show up every day, because they're out there connecting with the community. They hear the positive impact that they're making, and so they show up. And it's not easy, but it's not an easy area to work in. But when you get that positive feedback, it just helps you to be motivated to continue the mahi that you do. And so that's what gives me hope. The other thing that gives me hope is the youth. Our rangatahi out there, you look at them, they're amazing. The things that they're doing, things that they worry about, like climate change, other sorts of things. And they want to make a difference, that they are impactful, and that's what gives me hope for our future. So I really acknowledge the work that they do out there.
Awesome, Denise. Thank you. Over to you, Josiah.
I'll say, it's really my family and my brothers. I've got 4 brothers, and looking at them, celebrating with them. One of them finishes school this year, and so it's kind of been that time, despite the alert level shifting and things, not necessarily going to some of the rites of passage, but us doing those at home anyway, in our own way, because they're important. And deepening my understanding of our culture and our history. So places like the Pacific Education Centre, where we can learn our Ngana Samoa or our reo from our different Pacific languages for free. That's a personal opportunity we have.
Cool. Thank you, Josiah. Jaden.
Yeah, for me, hope is actually the little things that you find that are worth living for. For me, one example I use for a lot of people is me and a bunch of my friends back a wee while ago now. We used to, every New Year's Eve, we would go to the beach early in the morning and wait for the sunrise. And for years on end, I think it was about 3 years in a row, we had no sunrises. But every year after year after year, we keep coming just in the hopes that we see the sunrise. And for me, it's not actually the sunrise that is the hope. It's the ability to get up. It's the ability to just hope that it comes out, and if it doesn't come out, then just hoping next time it comes out. That's for me, it's like, working in the space, we see a lot of people that, have struggles, and just seeing that one little breakthrough they get gives you hope to keep working, keep going, but also working in the times when they're not well, and having hope that they'll get better. So yeah, kia ora.
Kia ora, Jaden. That's such an awesome story. Thank you for sharing that with us. And over to Hene Moa to finish us off.
Bye. The things that really give me hope are seeing the traction that our Wairua strengthening, our whānau strengthening activities are showing, the visibility, those activities. Mahuru Māori, Te Wiki o Te Reo Māori, Waka Ama, Kapahaka, all of these aspects, and seeing in my clinical role and witnessing my whānau that I work with telling me about how those things are impacting on them positively. So there is a direct correlation for me between seeing how our tamariki mokopuna, our rangatahi and our whānau derive strength from claiming back our Māori identity. That is preventing suicide. And that's what they tell me about in clinics. So those things give me so much hope that when we strengthen our cultural identity as Māori, we are all working towards getting rid of suicide.
Kia ora, and thank you to all four of you for what you've shared this morning. I just feel so inspired and energized, and I'm sure that everyone else on the call feels the same way as well. So thank you for being so open and for making time for this morning. We really appreciate it. Kia ora.
Kia ora.
Okay, we're going to head back to Minister Little now, who has some announcements. Over to you, Minister Little.
Thank you again, Jahan. And can I also just echo your thanks to the panelists too. Wow, what a powerful set of messages that was, and understanding we're all in that collective effort to give that message that it's okay when events in life knock you around. It's okay to feel sad about stuff when things don't work out and to feel a bit anxious. But actually, it's okay and important to find ways to talk about it. And can I just thank the panelists for all the work that you do, because that is part of that critical network and support that is out there and provided there. I was really impressed with the videos of the rangatahi as well. And it's actually in that spirit that we've got a couple of funds now that we have open for community organisations to get some funding to provide those sorts of support. And actually, I'm going to hand to my colleague, Opito Williams-Sewa, to talk about one of those funds. So, Opito.
I acknowledge everybody and greet you in the Tongan language in support of Tongan Language Week, Malo Lei, Malola Mali. And in my own language, simply thank you for Malo Faftai to everyone that's here. Thank you also to my ministerial colleagues. It's a privilege to join with them and just to listen to the download from the distinguished panel here. I found it quite empowering listening to that, because often we're not sure how to approach or discuss these matters in the Pacific communities. I, having experienced the loss of someone dear to me and my own family through suicide, it's reaffirmed in my mind that having a strong and connected ainga and communities are the most important protective factor against suicide. Sadly, in the Pacific community, many of us, including myself and my family, have been severely impacted by suicide. Often we're experiencing mental distress as a consequence, but we don't know. We often don't know we need help. We don't know where to go get help or who we can trust to talk to about that help. Often feeling of whakamā or shame. And so we will often end up struggling on our own. And I suppose listening to the kōrero and the talanoa today, the message I think we're all speaking about is there is help available. And this is why it's even more vital that our cultural perspectives, languages, values, and worldviews are integral into the design and delivery of mental health and addiction services. I use this one saying, if to underpin my health approach. The Alamea is a starship, it's poisonous. There's a certain starship that's poisonous. If you stand on it, the cure for that is to quickly turn the starship over and allow it to suck the poison out from the punctured wound before paralysis sets in and death. And so when I'm saying what I'm saying is that the solutions to our health problems are found within the collective, our families, our ainga, our communities. And so services which resonate with and reflect the shared principles, such as our respect for life, respect for the sacred bar relationships, respect for family, reciprocity, collectivism, and spirituality, is what has and will work best for our people. We need more services built on that principle of Buy Pacific, for Pacific philosophy. And so today I'm pleased to announce that the Pacifica Suicide Prevention Community Fund, administered by LEVAR, is open for applications. The $900,000 available from this fund will mean on-the-ground community interventions and programs that can help further support our Pacific communities is available, and applications to this fund will close on the 1st of October of this year. I'd also like to highlight that the Māori Suicide Prevention Community Fund, administered by Te Raupapa, remains open for applications until the 20th of September. Both these funds are about supporting whānau and communities to maximize their strength and well-being, to empower them to respond should distress arise. And together these funds will add an additional $2.5 million to suicide prevention efforts over the next year. And so thank you for the opportunity to share that with you. And I now like to pass to my colleague, Associate Health Minister Peeni Henare, for his commentary. Kia kaha, everybody, and stay safe.
Tēnā tātou katoa e oku rangatira e te taumata kōrero e oku hoa mahi. Tātou katoa kua hono a ipurangi nei ki tēnei o ngā wānanga. He mea hiki ngā ngākau, he mea whakapakari wairua. Kia rongo atu i ngā kōrero me ngā kaupapa kua whāriki hea nei ki mua i a tātou i te rānei tēnā koutou. Kia ora tātou. E mōhi ona tātou ki Aotearoa nei, it's well known, and sadly it's one of those traits of perhaps our ancestors or our forefathers where we're not very good at acknowledging or prioritizing our mental well-being. And of course, some of those themes and some of those challenges have been mentioned here today. We know also too that Māori are overrepresented in the numbers of people lost to whakamomori each year. And that rangatahi Māori in particular are significantly more likely to die by suicide than non-Māori rangatahi. The impacts of this are devastating to our whānau, hapu and iwi, and our collective future. This work starts by acknowledging suicide prevention as a whole of government, a whole of society endeavour, and by ensuring Māori are supported to build on the many strengths and opportunities that exist within their whānau. I'm fortunate to be the Associate Health Minister, serving alongside my colleagues. I'm also the Associate Housing Minister and the Minister for Whānau Ora. And it's the point that was made throughout the panel discussion that if we build just a house, we've only got just a house. But if we build a community and a village, we'll have the ingredients that will push our people successfully into the future. So I am proud to be here today alongside my colleagues and want to acknowledge them. And of course, the great discussion had by our panel. If I look towards our Māori community, we know that there are kaupapa for whānau available to our Māori people to help upskill in suicide prevention. This kaupapa is known as Mana Aki Aki. And Mana Aki Aki equips communities and whānau with the knowledge and skills needed to prevent suicide, to preserve our whakapapa. The wānanga is delivered through a Māori lens, weaving te reo me ona tikanga. Ngā whakatauki, ngā mātauranga Māori ki roto i ngā mahi katoa. To date, we've almost 2,000 whānau Māori certified as lifekeepers across Aotearoa. Long may that continue and long may that grow. Can I acknowledge the hard work of my tuahine here, Dr. Hinemoa Elder. Kia koe te tuahine, e te mārei kura e kawea nei i tēnei kaupapa o te oranga o tō tāua iwi o te motu whānui e mihi atu nei, e tangi atu nei. Suicide Prevention Office has also committed to funding a Māori Suicide Prevention Community Fund for the next 3 years, as my colleague has mentioned, run through Te Raupapa. In the first year of the fund, 74 whānau, hapu and iwi-led initiatives were funded. Long may that continue. Te Raupapa is the lead agency tasked with improving Māori health and well-being via health workforces, strategies and systems that implement Pai Ora. Over 4 years, $62 million has been committed to expanding and developing kaupapa Māori and whānau-centred services. And I'm hearing positive progress is happening in this area. Just in conclusion, it would be remiss of me not to look towards the future. Can I thank my colleague, our Minister of Health, the Honourable Andrew Little, in agreeing and supporting and promoting the work of a Māori Health Authority. I am extremely excited about the opportunity this presents, not just the Māori community, but our country, as we look towards the well-being of our people based on a kaupapa Māori-driven system that serves our people. My friend Andrew, to you and my colleagues, I want to say a sincere thank you on behalf of all of us, and conclude by saying not just towards the work being done on a Māori Health Authority, but the work that was discussed on this page, the words of my grandfather, "Kua tawhiti ke tō koutou haerenga mai ki te kore e haere tonu, he nui rawa o koutou mahi ki te kore e mahi nui tonu." We indeed have come too far not to go further, and we have done too much not to do more. Kia ora tātou.
Kia ora, Ministers Henare and Seal. Thank you for those updates and also for supporting this kaupapa and making time to be here today. Now, we are entering the final part of today's event. These are the Life Keepers Awards run by LEVA. Now, this is an awesome opportunity to recognise people who are making a real difference in suicide prevention. So I'll hand over to Minister Little.
Yeah, thanks again, Jahan. So can I begin by acknowledging LEVA, Denise, good to see you again, and the Life Keepers Awards program that you run, and everything else that you do. So these awards are for people who often do really important stuff, but often go unacknowledged, and actually probably people who would prefer they go unacknowledged because that's the nature of a lot of people who are dealing with very difficult circumstances. But it recognises individuals and organisations who persevere with those efforts, make a vital contribution to suicide prevention, and usually just extraordinary people doing, or ordinary people doing extraordinary things. So these recipients come from around the motu, and it's my great privilege to announce them. So I understand I'm just going to go through the names I have here. So first, Te Arani Daniels and Caroline Daniels from Northland. Next is Tony Ann Matara and Dallas Fall from Counties Manukau. Next, Matuku Deru from Rotorua. The next is Tutangarimu from Tairāwhiti. Next, Stacey Apiata from Hawke's Bay. Next is Carol Koha, Capital and Coast. Next is Peter Barnett from Hutt Valley. Next is Joe Lane from the Marlborough Youth Centre in Blenheim. And also Eli Mulholland, Ngāti Waewae Rangatahi Komiti on the West Coast. And finally, Jodie Mitchell from Dunedin. Thank you to all of those recipients of those awards for the mahi you do and the impact that you're having on lives and those extra special things that you do for people at a time of great need. Thank you.
Thank you, Minister. And we're going to take a look now at a video from Life Keepers.
Te Arani and Caroline Daniels are two sisters who have been nominated for the Suicide Prevention Kaupapa of Strengthening Whānau to preserve whakapapa through Te Taiao and Te Ao Māori. Tony Ann Matara and Dallas Fall are local heroes who have supported their rugby communities with leadership and safe kōrero around suicide. Mātaku Te Rū, on behalf of Patua Te Tāniwha Trust, has been nominated for their vision guided by the whakatauki, mā te kotahitanga e whaikaha e tātou. The rōpū understand that there is hope and that the shift from dark to light is possible for whānau. Ngāti for Life are a whānau trust brought together in response to whānau being lost to suicide to help get whānau into a safe space and prevent others experiencing the same mamai or hurt. Stacey Apiata has been nominated as a humble local hero and founder of Ko Waitoingoa Trust, where he is recognised for his suicide prevention advocacy, support for rangatahi, whānau and kāhui Pākeke. Carol Koha has been nominated in acknowledgement of her more than 30 years advocating for rangatahi and tāngata Māori in mainstream and kaupapa mental health services. Peter Barnett is being recognised for amplifying the voices of those with lived experience of mental distress, addiction or suicidality to strengthen the response and support people receive, and for helping shift the focus from a medical framework towards empowering communities to support each other and drive their own solutions. Marlborough Youth Centre and Blenheim have been acknowledged for their kaupapa of building trust to make a huge difference for young people, recognising that even small moments can mean a lot, so that they continue to provide a safe space for young people, providing care and support. Ngāti Waewae Rangatahi Komiti have been nominated in recognition for their strong community leadership, particularly for rangatahi Māori and suicide prevention. Jodie Mitchell is being acknowledged for her passion, volunteer work and dedication to her numerous communities in suicide prevention and for always providing a shoulder to lean on. And lastly, our special acknowledgements. Claire Simcock is a special acknowledgement being acknowledged for her years of hard work going above and beyond to support the Waikato community, both in the prevention of suicide and providing support following a suicide. And Roger Shave is a clinical psychologist who has spent many years serving communities impacted by suicide. He has been a driving force behind many initiatives and resources, and his expertise and genuine passion has made him an invaluable contribution to the kaupapa of preventing suicide.
Awesome. Once again, a massive congratulations to all of our Lifekeepers Award winners. And I'd like to thank our ministers and our panelists for their time this morning. Most importantly, thank you for watching. Thanks for being part of this conversation. There they all are, our panelists and our speakers, and to all of you joining us from around the country. Look, we heard some great messages in that panel, but I think one of them that stood out is effectively this idea that you cannot pour from an empty cup. So please make sure that you prioritize your own well-being as well. Maybe take a tip from Jaden, and if alert levels allow, get up early one morning and drive out to the beach and see whether that sunrise manages to poke its head above the horizon. Thanks for joining us. Stay safe and stay well. Mā te wā.
Thank you, everybody. Appreciate it.